everybody, and welcome to today's DevOps Voices. Today we are joined by Jan de Vries. Jan is an IT consultant, trainer coach, and public speaker in a wide array of fields such as Lean, DevOps, business information management, and anti-fragility. Jan is a certified DASA DevOps training and also working closely in our community and has trained many DASA DevOps courses around the world. In this episode, we'll explore what anti-fragility is, how this has become one of the underlying forces of DevOps, and why you need to understand anti-fragility when working in a DevOps environment. Yeah, thanks for joining us on today's podcast. And while I welcome you, tell us a little bit more about yourself and Antifragility Works, your new organization.
Yeah, thank you, Dimitri. Well, you introduced me as somebody who is involved in a lot of areas, but actually it's only one area, and that's contribute to the success of an organization. I started working in IT in 1987, and I actually made an upstream journey. I started as a developer, and then more and more towards the source of the requirements. And then as a business analyst, I began questioning the requirements, and that got me involved in strategy development, and that put me on the trail of Blue Ocean Strategy. One of my other partnerships, Blue Ocean Recon. And the authors of the book Blue Ocean Strategy, Chen Kim and Renee Mauborgne, have been in the top of Thinkers 50 for 1 decade now, and currently they are number one, and which indicates for me the importance of their work, and also think about the beginning, about the requirements of your strategy.
Right.
And as you mentioned, 2 weeks ago, I launched Antifragility.works, and that's another contribution to the success of organizations, I hope.
Absolutely. So we will learn more about your vision, or in general about anti-fragility. And but before we get there, can you tell us a little bit more when you became acquainted with DevOps, and what triggered you to start helping professionals?
Yeah. Well, in 2013, that was actually the year that I started exploring DevOps. Because after my upstream journey that I just mentioned, I started a downstream journey to examine how strategy can be implemented more quickly and what obstacles need to be overcome in order to do so. And I came across literally all the waste that is covered in DevOps literature. And I saw the mess that was left by Frederick Taylor's principles of scientific management. People living in silos, lack of creativity, inflexible structures, and well, there was a lot of work to do. So DevOps and all the literature around it resonated very much with me.
Mm-hmm. I can give you some key examples about this mess that you observed. I mean, and the silos, the lack of creativity. I mean.
Yeah, then it's literally what I mentioned. People not talking to each other, people not communicating to each other. When I was a developer and I walked into a operations department, all operations people were looking at me like, what is this developer doing over here in this department? And a few years later, I was working for a operations department, and I was entering a developer floor, and all the developers were looking at me. What is this ops person doing out here? And who is actually who will be punished or something for what he or she has been doing towards ops? So there was a lot of frustration, a lot of lack of trust. Yeah. So it's, especially the silos. That's something that kept coming back.
Yeah. Hey, and about anti-fragility, is it just a new word for robustness? What is it? What's so special about it?
Well, I'm glad that you asked that particular question, because it's a really good one, because a lot of people think, well, anti-fragility is just another term for especially resilience. People think that that's the same. But anti-fragility is actually the exact opposite of fragility. And until 2012, when Nicholas Taleb wrote his book Antifragile, we did not have a word for the exact opposite of fragile. People would call it robust or resilient. And let me briefly explain those four concepts, because that's actually makes it a lot more clearer. Fragile systems or organizations, because the system can be fragile, but an organization can also be fragile. They break down very quickly. For instance, regarding systems, older Windows versions like Windows 95 or something, fragile. But a lot of organizations are fragile or become fragile after their first years of innovation and growth. I mean, Blockbuster Video became fragile when they did not respond to Netflix mail order services. And we all know was also what happened to Kodak.
Yeah.
And banks and their systems, they are a good example of robustness. They continue to function for a long time until the stress becomes too high, like in 2008. And robust systems and organizations, they actually suppress randomness and volatility. And as a result of that, they become fragile. So they think they are still robust, but they, in the meantime, they are becoming fragile. Aircrafts are a very good example of resilience. For instance, an Airbus 380 that is actually flying software. It will not get better during a flight, but if one hydraulic system fails, there is another. And if a vacuum system fails, there's another, maybe electrical alternative. It keeps functioning, it keeps flying. And anti-fragile, the last one, well, the best metaphor for anti-fragility is actually Hydra, the multi-headed monster in Greek and Roman mythology. It's also the logo of anti-fragility.works. And maybe you know the story, when Hercules chopped one of the heads of Hydra, he discovered that it was immediately replaced by two new heads. With every attack, it became stronger. And in IT, we have another similar vicious beast, the Chaos Monkey, that was Netflix. And it randomly attacks a system between 9 a.m. and 3 p.m. and engineers fix it during office hours. Well, Netflix actually proved that it worked, because after some time they had to build a chaos gorilla, because they had become immune to the monkey. And after that, they even had to build a chaos Kong, as they had become immune to the chaos gorilla. So you can become anti-fragile and even more anti-fragile and even more anti-fragile. So yeah, the systems of Netflix proved that this really works also, especially in IT.
And Jan, about the banks and the example about, let's say, 2008, I mean, serious crash. Well, was it because of the banks not being anti-fragile, or was it more the market and the underlying principle and economics were, I mean, not built on solid principles?
Well, a lot of there's a lot been said about that, of course, but I think that it was the banks and the banking system. And also these days, banks are a little less fragile than they were in 2008, but they are not resilient. I think you should cut banks in two parts, like a system bank, which does all the transactions, and commercial banks do all the commercial stuff. and you should not mix that two things. And that system bank the transaction bank, well, for instance, that should be nationalized. I mean, that should be in government's hands.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's great to see some examples from various different industries. I think overall, I get some of the picture. So, but where do you start? I mean, or better, as an organization, how can you assess your, let's say, degree of anti-fragility? You know, how do you assess it?
Well, you already said in the beginning that fragility is difficult. It is difficult to understand. I think that 90% of the people who start reading books of Taleb will not reach the end of the book because it's so difficult. He's really writing in a difficult way, a difficult style. But what you can do is you can actually measure three aspects of anti-fragility, and that's non-linearity, optionality, and transferring fragility. And especially if you translate that theory to a series of best practices, you can just check whether you do that or not. For instance, non-linearity, it translates to continuous integration, continuous deployment.
Yeah.
So if you have a continuous delivery pipeline, well, that means that you are on a certain level of anti-fragility regarding the aspect of non-linearity. What you also should do is to terminate all software projects. So not bringing work to the people anymore. Sorry, not people to the work, but work to the people. So work to a value stream. And we already talked about chaos engineering. That's also an important part of non-linearity. And the second one is optionality. And that actually is about benefiting from options that you have. So that translates, for instance, to minimum viable products. That translates to A/B testing. That translates to canary releases. So if you do all that, then also optionality could more or less contribute to your level of anti-fragility. And the last one is actually the most interesting one for us, because transferring fragility actually translates to decentralizing decision making, reducing organizational debt, and DevOps. Because transferring fragility, the opposite of it is actually skin in the game. So a person has something to lose in a given situation, he or she has skin in the game. And without DevOps, Dev has no skin in the Ops game, and Ops has no skin in the Dev game. If you put them together in one team, they have skin in each other's game. So there is, just by putting them in the same and giving them the same goal, well, that's just changes a lot in the way people think and act.
Yeah, it makes the whole system or the whole team more anti-fragile because they all have a lot to lose, and you have an inbuilt system to make the positive things happen.
You will not build crappy software as a developer because the next day you are responsible for it running in production. So when that happens, you will build software in a totally different way as compared to the case in which you were in a development department which was totally uncoupled from an ops department.
Right. And back to this book, I mean, that you're referring to. I mean, what makes it difficult to read? I mean, why do so many people do not reach to the end? I mean, are the concepts difficult? Is it the style? Is it difficult to relate to? What, in your opinion, what makes it challenging to complete the book? What is it?
Well, if I read an English book, a normal English book, I need, for instance, I need a dictionary every 1 or 2 pages. And
Yeah.
when I read a book from Taleb, I need a dictionary 4 or 5 times per page.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
reading words I have never read before.
Yeah.
And then I'm looking that up and okay, so that is an English word, but sometimes it's ancient or
Yeah.
it is very complex. It's
Yeah.
from the academy world,
Yeah.
and also his style, because he the chapters, the names of the chapters in the paragraphs are also kind of cryptic. So you cannot um, um, browse through the book and think, okay, where is this information that I need? Because all the chapters and the paragraphs
Mm.
there is no link to what is inside of that paragraphs and chapters, so
Right.
it's not accessible.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
So yeah, and about chaos engineering, I'm reading about this in this context with anti-fragility a lot. Yeah, you also refer to it a couple of times. Can you tell us exactly what it is? Is it a tool or is it a mindset? Can you
it is.
elaborate on that?
I think it's both, but the most important one, it's a mindset. I mean, you have to realize yourself that everything that you are building
Mm-hmm.
can break, will break. So
Yeah.
what will you do in case it breaks? So you don't you don't you don't want prevent it from breaking. You just want to make sure that if it breaks, and it will break, that it is actually prepared for breaking. And how will you, what kind of extra code will you put in there to make it cope with breaking? That is actually the mindset. And of course, it's also about tools. There's a lot of now, for instance, the Chaos Monkey,
Yeah.
which is part of the Simian Army, and the Simian Army is open source, and that open source can be downloaded. And well, after you have downloaded it, you could release it in your own environment if you like. So the tooling is already there. And it's actually it's random software which triggers malfunctions, errors in your environment, and that could be anything. So that could be based on what Netflix has programmed, but it could also be something completely different. So
Mm.
really to take a random approach of what could go wrong. And the
Right.
mindset is about me realizing that everything will go wrong.
Yeah.
So I
Right.
have to prepare for that.
Mm-hmm. Is it more important in these days with increasingly rapid change with technology and pandemic even? I mean, it has become more important, more of an important topic, is it? I mean, in today's world, will it be
Yeah.
continue this way? And can you explain why?
Yes, absolutely. I think that anti-fragility has become more important in well, in the last decade or two
Mm,
decades, or actually since 2012, because before that it did not exist.
mm,
So, but I think we should be glad that we now have that book and many more books regarding that particular subject, and it will help you in changing your mindset.
yeah,
You cannot control the world, so the world will keep changing.
yeah,
Um, there's this famous quote which says that if the rate of change on the outside exceeds the rate of change on the inside, the end is near. That's actually
yeah,
what the CEO of General Electric once said. So,
right,
well, you have to adapt fast enough to keep up with the changing world. And if you are fragile as an organization, or if your systems are fragile, well, then every change is actually a change too much, because you are not prepared for change. You want to keep it as stable as possible for as long as possible.
Mm-hmm. And so that's very mindset driven. So if you look at the DevOps, the DASA DevOps principles, and you know them also inside out. I mean, there's 6 of them, and so can you elaborate on the connection between these principles? I mean, the first one is customer-centric action and anti-fragility. I mean, it would be interesting to perhaps walk through and see where we can find some connections or linking points. So
actually, you can make a link between anti-fragility and all the 6 DevOps principles. For instance, customer-centric action, the first one, it mentions calculated risk taking. That's encouraged. And that's important for anti-fragility, because it actually helps to inoculate your system and your organization with a little risk to rapidly respond to changing or emerging needs. And that actually helps to build anti-fragility by responding to the outside world, to your customer, and the world of your customer. And the second one is create with the end in mind. DevOps teams need to act as product companies. They have to become actually mini companies. And they take their own decentralized decisions, and that also builds anti-fragility. Politically, a city-state like Singapore is more successful than a big nation-state.
And is that because of the decentralization? Is it because, I mean, at that level you take smarter, better decisions in the interest of that community at that level? I mean, what is the underlying philosophy from the book or from the anti-fragility thinking?
Yeah, you will be faster. You will take faster decisions. You cannot decentralize all decisions. Some decisions should be taken centralized. There's also this other book from David McKay. The book is called Turn the Ship Around. Maybe you know that book. And that's also about this particular point. About decentralizing and also SAFE, the Scaled Agile framework, is also mentioning that. So what we tend to do is to centralize almost all decisions, and what you actually do is to decentralize almost all decisions, but keeping some decisions of some sort at the centralized way. And the Scaled Agile framework even has a table to decide what you should centralize and what you should decentralize. But this says especially that people at the information level should also have the authorization. You actually bring the authorization level to the information level instead of information to the authorization level. So what we these days do in 90% of the cases is centralized, and what we should do in 90% of the cases is decentralized. That's actually the point. But that's only one aspect of creating with the end in mind, of course.
And end-to-end responsibilities probably on a similar lines. It's also about getting more skin in the game as a team, and also about decentralized decision making. So I mean, it probably links to the same principles in the anti-fragility world.
Those both principles are a little bit similar from a anti-fragile point of speaking, but especially the skin in the game aspect is a very strong one when you talk about end-to-end responsibility. Yes, yes.
And I'm sorry so if we take the link to the competence model, I mean, 8 knowledge areas and the 4 skills areas, can there any links be seen there, or I mean, is there any connection towards the data competence model?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And there's actually a very negative one in the case that one of the competence areas is about security, risk, and compliance.
Yeah.
And when you read the book Antifragile, and when you see how Taleb thinks about risk management, he doesn't call it risk management, he calls it risk theater. So risk managers are not doing real work. They are making up risks that they can think of at a certain point in time, and then they are doing a lot of work to make sure that that risk is mitigated. And yeah, he says that's not how it works. You don't want to list all the risks and then mitigate all those risks. Now, what you want to do is you want to make your organization stronger to cope with any risk, and to make use of any opportunity. So don't focus on specific risks. Do not do risk management in the old-fashioned way. So
those
instead of security,
sorry, go. So, but Jan, so those security risk and compliance officer, I mean, they should actually become more of, well, cultural coaches, you know, to enable the individual and professional to deal with any change and risk, and when something happens, show the right behavior and push the right buttons, instead of focusing on the risk itself, which is called risk theater.
Yeah, absolutely. So you could security and risk, and compliance, you could also rename it to anti-fragility and compliance, for instance.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Yeah. Well, we can have a separate discussion on that. So, Jan, towards, I think we have about a couple of minutes left for our audience. So I'd like to take a slight turn here and talk about something very interesting, which I know that you are working on and have been working on, and it's about the impact of DevOps on non-IT teams, such as finance, HR, control, support. Can you share some of your findings? Because I mean, we talked about it in the past, and I would really like to learn a little bit more and share it with our community as well.
Yeah, yes, I already published some short articles about it on LinkedIn, and also on financial management last week. In our research, we call those functions actually support staff. So all the support staff that will interact with Agile and DevOps organizations. And if you take end-to-end responsibility and cross-functionality, and we talked about it just a few minutes ago when we were talking about the principles. If you take that literally, those support staff silos have to change. And up to now, we included HR and control, test, procurement, and compliance. For instance, if you look at HR, for example, you could ask yourself, what kind of HR work should be transferred to Agile and DevOps teams?
Yeah.
And you could think of well, those teams can hire their own colleagues, of course. Yeah. And when I say of course, then you hear an HR department say, well, not of course, that's what we do, that's our work. We don't want to bother Agile DevOps teams with hiring their own colleagues. But that's actually, I think that's the direction in which we should transfer. There's also work that can be, of course, be modernized or automated. Like for instance, like sifting CVs. Nobody wants to do that. Also work that belongs in a automated HR service center for answering all kind of questions, and but also work that actually should be like making a job matrix or a job family matrix with describes all the duties and qualifications of all kind of generalists, types 1, 2, 3, 4, because I think, and that's also what I hear, is that these days we are evolving towards a one function company. You could say, okay, on the IT side we only have engineers, and on the business side we only have customer journey experts, and even more extreme, that could be a one function company. So that kind of work, job matrix, job family matrix, that is coming to an end. And of course, new work will pop up, like data analysis on HR data. And the last one is, well, work that will be continued in a conventional way, but I think that will be not that much kind of work. So HR will change a lot due to Agile and DevOps, because that really changes the organization they have been living in for the last decades.
But is it because of those teams becoming more self-steering, autonomous, or is it also because of the complexity for HR to understand the requirements and the profiles on getting the best people for the teams?
Yeah. I think it's both. It's the autonomy. The autonomy of the teams also means that the management levels, you need less management, middle management and top management, when teams become so autonomous, because they are not. Of course, they still need business management. They still need a C-level in an organization, of course, but all the middle management in an organization, well, that is kind of disappearing. That has disappeared for a certain level, and I think that will continue.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks for joining us today on DevOps Voices. It was a pleasure as always talking to you, and I will talk to you soon. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Dimitri.
Have a great day, Jan. Thanks.